Pittsburgh Steelers at the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are favored by 3.5 against the undefeated Steelers. You know, everybody puts out their power rankings every week, and everybody has to put the Steelers at number one. They feel obligated to put the Steelers at number one.
Only undefeated team, Steve.
So they have to be number one. But Vegas disagrees. It is in Baltimore, but 3.5 point spread as of right now for the Ravens. What are you looking for in this one?
The defenses. So I kind of get why the Ravens are favored. I think it might.
Yeah, me too.
Why is your reason?
They're awesome other than games against the Chiefs.
Okay. That's not the reason
they're just
I'm
a more
with.
dominant all-around team, I think.
They're also coming off a bye, and they're a good coaching team and a good team coming off a bye, whereas the Steelers had a tough go of it last week against Tennessee. That makes sense. That makes a difference, even if home field doesn't necessarily make a difference anymore. Also, the PFF's power ratings, which if you go to Green Line, if you have that, the sort of betting resource, go to the power ratings, that pulls it leverages all of our ELO stuff and our data to basically tell you how much better each team is than the next on a neutral field, all things considered, right? And we have the Ravens actually as 2.5, almost 3 point better than the Steelers. So it does make sense that they're favored. On the other hand, this Steelers defense, which is the thing I'm coming back to every single week, is just murderous towards opposing offenses. Now, the Titans, I think, did a really good job of eventually righting that and getting away from it and being able to hurt them late on. I'm really intrigued to see. Baltimore's unique, right? They have Lamar Jackson. Nobody else has a Lamar Jackson. Therefore, it's a completely different prospect to try and stop this team as it is anybody else. So does Lamar give them a unique way of fighting back against this defense, or are the things that Pittsburgh are doing right now, which is basically throwing bodies at the line of scrimmage, regardless of whether it's run or pass, are they actually the things you need to do to shut down Lamar Jackson in 2020?
Yeah, so I want to take back a little bit about what I said. I don't think the Ravens are they're not a better all-around team necessarily than the Steelers. The Steelers, I think, when you just kind of go like unit by unit, might be as well-rounded as any team in the league. You know, there's no like major weaknesses there other than the secondary, which has been good the last couple weeks, hasn't been, up to par, what they've expected. I think the interesting part of this is what you're saying, though, right? When you go up against the Steelers, I'll say the same thing I said last week. Should the Titans have made this a Ryan Tannehill game? On paper, you don't want to go 7-on-7 in the trenches and try to run the ball. Well, the Ravens want to run the ball, right? Mm-hmm. But when the Ravens run, it's not 7-on-7 or 8-on-8. It's Lamar changing the math and changing everything, right? So that's what makes it fascinating. The Ravens don't need to beat up the Steelers' defensive front from a blocking standpoint. They just have to make them wrong. That's where Lamar comes in. So I do expect more keepers, so to speak, more Lamar-driven run game. But that's one of the biggest stories of the year for the Ravens. They haven't run the ball the same way as they did last year.
And I wonder if they've been specifically protecting him for this game. Right? It's like Lamar is nursing an injury. Let's limit how much we ask him to do, because in a couple of weeks' time on the horizon is the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we're going to need him in that game. Like, we're not going to need him against Cincinnati. We're not going to need him necessarily before that. But when Pittsburgh are there, he actually matters in terms of this game. Particularly because when you look at like the biggest mismatches up front, the Steelers' interior guys, who we talked about before, they're really good at making sure they're one-on-one all game long. Cameron Hayward, Stephon Tuitt, you're not getting double teams.
Alu.
Yeah. You're not getting double teams on those guys because of the blitzes they send, right? So they're one-on-one against those interior Ravens offensive linemen who we've talked about before are now a weakness because they're not Marshall Yanda. So suddenly there's an already apparent mismatch. You're probably not going to have the success you want running the ball up the middle with Ingram or Gus Edwards or whoever. That space is going to be missing. So you're going to need Lamar Jackson to be taking the ball on the keeper around the perimeter and hope you can win there.
To back up your point real quick, top 5 graded interior defensive linemen with at least 150 snaps. Tyson Alu, second in the NFL for the Steelers. Stephon Tuitt's 4th. Cameron Hayward, 5th. They have 3 of the 5 interior defensive linemen in the NFL right now. That's impressive.
Yeah. So as I say, they've got a mismatch there. The Ravens' mismatch might be with Lamar, but if you're just blitzing, if you're sending bodies at him all day long, that might take away that. You might bottle up those lanes. The really intriguing thing is teams seem to have almost reverted back to the Miami game plan from week 1 of 2019 that was such a complete train wreck, right? I don't trust you to be able to pass the ball over our heads, so we're going to just send bodies at you in terms of Lamar and the Ravens. He hasn't been as good this year at doing that. The stuff we talked about, the 8% touchdown rate was absurd. It was unsustainable. It's going to come back to earth, and it has. And teams almost seem to have like crept back towards that game plan. It's like, all right, we got a little bit ahead of ourselves last year. That was too much, and it turns out he could punish us. But right now, he's not in that same groove, so that kind of is the way to stop him, or at least slow him down.
Plus, the Dolphins didn't have the horses, really, to pull it off. Now, Minkah Fitzpatrick was a part of that Dolphins team, but they had him like one-on-one with Marquise Brown, and that was, 83 yards later, not great. I will say, again, the Steelers have the pieces to slow down the Ravens. So, and the fact that the Ravens haven't been as dominant this year, does make this, oh man, it's going to be a great matchup. It's really a good one. I can't wait to see if, to your point, the Ravens have kind of been setting this up. And I do think we see Lamar carrying 10 to 15 times in this one. They have to rely on him more than they've had to against some of the worst teams in the NFL over the last few weeks when they've been playing.
And the other thing is, it's 2020, right? So even if like defenses just don't hold up over a game, it doesn't happen anymore. It's too hard. So the Steelers might have, this is what happened against the Titans. The Steelers had the defense to stuff up that Titans offense, but eventually it got them with a few big plays. The Ravens, the same thing, right? You might do a really good job for like 3 quarters, but it only takes a couple of plays, and it's Marquise Brown for 75, and it's Lamar getting into open field for another 70, and suddenly it's a 14-point swing, and it looked like you had a crappy day on defense. You know what I mean?
I get it. I think this is really intriguing for the Steelers right now. They're 6-0. You can look back at their schedule and say, who did they beat that was good? The first team was the Titans. Good win against a good Titans team, but they beat up the Giants, the Broncos, Texans, Eagles, Browns are good, but they crushed them. So the last few weeks, they've beaten teams with good records. If they get past the Ravens right now, go to 7-0. Cowboys, Bengals, Jaguars are next before they meet the Ravens again in late November. We could be looking at a 10-0 Steelers team hosting the Ravens on November 26th.
For the Steelers, to an extent, this game is almost house money. Like, all they want is to split the series with the Ravens at this point, right? They already have a lead in the division. They're undefeated, the only undefeated team. In terms of seeding, if they can get out of this season having split the series with the Ravens, they're in great shape. And this is the away game, right? So it's like a shot to nothing. We take a swing at it here. We don't get it. Okay, we get to bring them back to Heinz Field and take another shot at it later on. So I'm kind of curious to see if they do just go, guns out, guns blazing, and see if they can pull off something crazy, knowing that they have like a second shot at this in a few weeks' time, with the one that really matters.
So what about the other side of the ball? Big Ben playing a more conservative brand of football, spreading the ball around to a pretty good group of playmakers when they're all on the field healthy. Deontay Johnson, Juju, the emergence of Chase Claypool, who was kind of non-existent last week against the Titans, going up against that Ravens secondary. That matches up pretty well. Marlon Humphrey's their highest graded player. He's one of the best corners in the NFL. Jimmy Smith still playing ball. You texted me the other day, like, he's been around since 2011. I feel like I've had him as like a bounce back candidate for 8 straight years now.
Yeah.
But he's playing pretty well. I mean, the Ravens have the corners to slow down the Steelers.
They do. And Marlon Humphrey, I think, is honestly one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. Just doesn't get the credit because of what he's asked to do in that defense. Here's the thing, right? So Ben Roethlisberger has turned into this more, again, I don't like using the term game manager because it's become this pejorative for quarterbacks, but facilitator within the offense.
That's
right?
good, yeah.
His job is to just get the ball to all these playmakers and not be a reason that there's problems.
Get the ball quickly.
Yes. Now, that is actually the critical point here that I'm making, right? Get the ball out of your hands fast. Get it in the hands of these guys, right? But where the Ravens are really good on defense is not just that they blitz you like crazy. These are the number 1 and number 2 blitz teams in the NFL, right? The Ravens and the Steelers. So they're going to blitz you a lot. But what they do on the back end is they work out, okay, if I send this blitz and you read it, where do you want to go with the ball, right? What is your hot read off this?
Right.
And that's what they attack, right? They are really good at sending a guy into the space that you want to attack off the back of this blitz. So the Steelers offense, in one way, looks perfect for this defense, right? We get the ball out of our hands fast. We're not asking him to hold on for an age and get sacked. We're going to shoot all these quick spaces. On the other hand, that's what they want you to do. So this is a great chess battle between who wins that, right? Do the Steelers win by having different hot reads to the ones the Ravens anticipate them having, or do the Ravens essentially manage to drop a guy into every hot route the Steelers want to run and end up with like 3 Roethlisberger picks on the day of him trying to avoid the blitz, getting it out quickly? There's
one other factor here. Yannick Ngakoue. Ravens traded for him last week during the bye. And we mentioned the Ravens blitz here every single week and how they don't really rely on players to win one-on-ones. And last year, they definitely didn't have the horses to do it.
Right.
But now, Calais Campbell's there. You bring in Yannick Ngakoue. You have 2 guys, and Judon is still there, and they move him around, and he's, you have 3 legitimate, pretty good pass rushers, 2 better than, Calais Campbell and Yannick Ngakoue you can kind of trust to get after the quarterback. Do they change up their strategy just a little bit? Are they actually going to, what is this breaking news here? Are they actually going to trust their 4-man rush just a little bit with an Ngakoue there and a Calais Campbell, 2 guys that they've brought into the mix over the last year?
I don't think that they'll scale back the blitz because they bring in Ngakoue, because I think their blitz is – I don't think their blitz is a product of not having horses. I think their not having horses is a product of their blitz plan.
Okay.
Right? But what having the horses does, or at least upgrading the horses, is mean that the one-on-one matchups that you scheme by virtue of the blitz are now going to win more often, right? So it's like the Steelers thing. They make sure that you cannot double team Cameron Hayward and Stephon Tuitt. Therefore, those guys win more often because they're one-on-one all the time. If you get Ngakoue one-on-one all time, he's going to win more than Matthew Judon did, or whoever else would be in that spot. So I think their defense just gets more effective by him being there. I don't think he's going to cause them to dial back on the aggressiveness in terms of how often they blitz.
All right, so Ravens by 3.5. As usual here, we talk through it, and I'm like, man, I thought I liked the Ravens. Now I kind of like the Steelers in this one.
Good. Do that, because I want to go the other way.
All right, I'll take Pittsburgh. I don't feel great about it, though.
I don't love the spread. I don't like the fact that it's 3.5 by what we're seeing. On the other hand, I can kind of see why it is, and I think the matchups are good.
3.5 is massive for any of these AFC North. The Steelers and Ravens, no matter who they have personnel-wise, always seem to play those close games anyway. But I guess I'll take Pitt.
Thanks for watching the PFF YouTube channel. And if you want to subscribe, all you have to do is push the button. Don't forget everything you get. A little fantasy, push the button. A little green line for the gambling aspects of the game, push the button. College football, push the button. The YouTube channel from PFF.